Today's session will be broadcast live on the web TV of the Chamber of Deputies, and that remote participation is allowed for colleagues in accordance with the procedures established by the Rules Committee. So the next item on today's agenda is the hearing by video conference of the chairman of the European Affairs Committee of the Assembly of the Republic of North Macedonia, Arber Ademi, as part of the joint debate on resolutions Onori, Rosato, Orsini, and Kayata on the enlargement of the EU to the Western Balkans. Also, on behalf of Chairman Giulio Vigna and colleagues from the Foreign Affairs and EU committees, I would like to welcome Chairman Ademi, and I would thank him for participating in our activities. I will leave the floor to Chairman Giulio Vigna, who will briefly introduce before leaving the floor to you, Chairman Ademi. Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Welcome. The idea of this hearing, which was supposed to take place a few weeks ago but was cancelled due to the unpredictable course of our activities, was solidified thanks to the kind availability of Chairman Ademi, who I had the opportunity to meet in person in an interesting conversation on the sidelines of the last COSAC meeting, which was held in Madrid at the end of November. Concerning European current events, I must mention that at the conclusion of the EU Western Balkans Summit held yesterday in Brussels, a declaration was signed, the text of which is being distributed here at the Parliament, in a declaration in which the EU reaffirms its full and unequivocal commitment to the prospect of the Western Balkans joining the European Union, and calls for the acceleration of the accession process on the basis of credible reforms by the partners, including fair and rigorous conditionality and the principle of meritocracy. The EU also welcomes the confirmation of the commitment by Western Balkan partners to the primacy of democracy, fundamental rights and values, as well as the rule of law. 2 days ago, Chairman Ademi, the resolution was voted. A resolution by the majority was voted, submitted by the Italian government, and was voted in favor of this resolution regarding a meeting of the European Council. And one of the 2 points of this resolution is the importance of the EU enlargement to include the Western Balkans. I would stop here, and I will leave the floor to Chairman Formentini. Thank you. In line with the Tirana Declaration of December 2022, the EU stresses the need to achieve further progress on the functioning of democratic institutions, the fight against corruption and organized crime, and support for human rights, gender equality, and the rights of persons belonging to minorities. It also calls for the full alignment of the Western Balkan partners with the EU's common foreign and security policy, including on sanction regimes, while ensuring a commitment to inclusive regional cooperation and the strengthening of good neighborly relations. With regards to North Macedonia, in this context, the implementation of the Prespa agreement with Greece and the Treaty of Friendship, Good Neighborliness and Cooperation with Bulgaria is called for. Before giving the floor to President Ademi, I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate here Italy's full support for Skopje's entry into the EU. This orientation, evidenced by the 4 resolutions submitted in recent months and which represent the reference of today's hearing, is strongly shared by all the forces present in the Parliament. At the same time, the Italian political class is fully aware of the importance of the reform program that North Macedonia will have to carry out in order to bring itself into line with European standards and promptly enter the European Union. Having made this brief introduction, I will now leave the floor to Chairman Ademi to deliver his remarks.
Thank you. It's a great honor to address to both committees today. Especially, I would like to say hello to everyone there and to President of the Committee on EU Policies, Mr. Giulio Vigna, and to Mr. Tremonti, Chair of the Committee on Foreign and EU Affairs, and to all members of both committees. We are very, very thankful for Italian support for North Macedonia, especially in our EU accession process, and for supporting us as Western Balkan countries to be part of EU as soon as possible. As you know, last year, North Macedonia marked the long-awaited opening of negotiations, and we set in our negotiation framework 2030 as our goal to be prepared. So this is an indicative date, which in turn will serve as a mobilizing factor, together with the eager fulfillment of the Copenhagen criteria and the obligations arising from the negotiation process. Opening of our EU accession negotiations is recognition for all the reform efforts of my country, for establishing a functional multi-ethnic model with the Ohrid Framework Agreement and pursuing good neighborly relations, especially through the PRESPA agreement with Greece and friendship agreement with Bulgaria. We are aware that in order to continuing the negotiations by clusters, we need to include the Bulgarian citizens in our constitution according to the negotiation framework. And at the moment, this is the most important task that the Parliament has to fulfill. At this stage, we started with the constitutional changes, but we have not ensured two-thirds of the majority that is needed for the necessary votes. I sincerely hope that all MPs, both from the majority and from the opposition, will not bring it into question or stop the European future of our country. I believe that we should devote ourselves to things that connect us with Bulgaria, such as the good business relations, as well as the construction of Corridor 8, which will connect Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Albania, and Italy too. At the same time, we are focused on the internal obligations that lie ahead of us until the opening of the cluster fundamentals. North Macedonia is not starting from zero, from start. We have a comparative advantage due to the 20-year experience of implementing the Stabilization and Association Agreement, which brought us to a more advanced alignment with the European legislation. Here, I want to emphasize that we had numerous difficulties and challenges on the way to our membership in the European Union from the very beginning of our independence in 1991. But the most important thing is that our country did not change its Euro-Atlantic orientation. The government, in continuity, makes efforts to maintain the dynamics of the process and for North Macedonia to continue the negotiations together with countries of the Western Balkans, for which the support of the EU member states, such as Italy, is extremely important to us. In this way, we not only address geopolitical challenges, but also ensure that the integration process remains a credible and transformative path for our country and the Western Balkans as a whole. It is very encouraging that the internal EU debate on the question of the next enlargement and modes how to facilitate this has gained recently, both in pace and quality. President Michel has adamantly insisted also on indicative 2030 as possible date. In fact, this summer, North Macedonia initiated the concept of more integration before membership, which proposes different modalities for a more gradual integration that should increase our involvement and bring forward benefits that are more practical during the process. We need a more predictable integration process that will enable for a gradual integration that with more tangible benefits in the pre-accession period. North Macedonia has been attending the meetings of the European political community, and we see its benefits as a new forum for high-level dialogue on European geostrategic affairs. This platform provides a unique opportunity for countries in the Western Balkans to engage in more in-depth discussions and collaborations. Evaluating the public support for the EU accession process in my country, we are facing a concerning trend. While we initially enjoyed strong backing for EU membership, recent surveys indicate that this support has declined to 60%. This decline is a significant cause for alarm, and it's essential that we address it comprehensively and urgently. Furthermore, we cannot ignore the impact of foreign malign influences, particularly in the form of disinformation campaigns. They exploit existing divisions, fuel skepticism towards the EU, and amplify nationalist sentiments. To address these challenges, a multi-pronged approach is needed. It is essential to engage with civil society, the media, and educators to counter divisive narratives. Additionally, we should focus on economic growth and social development. We must ensure that all segments of the population feel the benefits of EU membership. In summary, the decline in public support for EU accession, coupled with the rise of nationalist and populist discourse and the influence of foreign malign actors, presents a formidable challenge. We must be vigilant, proactive, and united in our response to safeguard the credibility of the EU accession process and ensure that promise of European integration remains an appealing and beneficial path for our citizens. We expect that the principle of merit must remain an absolute imperative. When our countries deliver, each in their individual dossiers, then the EU must deliver back. This is the ultimate motivator, and we hope that the EU will be able to reach important decisions for the region this December. In the end, I will repeat that our goal is to be full EU member country. And of course, once again, we are very much thankful for Italian support for our efforts to be part of European family. I hope that we will continue to cooperate closer and closer to fulfill, let's say, the same goals that we have as part of the European family. Thank you for your attention.
Grazie.
Thank you. And I would ask if there are any questions or comments from our colleagues here in person or remotely. We have Honorable Member Onori remotely would like to ask a question. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chairman Ademi, for your remarks. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Thank you for your remarks, Chairman Ademi. I had a couple of issues that I would like to raise and some questions for you. The first is, in your opinion, how can Italy support the accession process of North Macedonia and facilitate the integration and accession process of the Western Balkans in general? So what kind of contribution can Italy bring? And the second question is the negative influence and nationalist or populist malevolent issues that are being driven by third parties, and how they can be harmful to this process and Europe in general. So I was wondering if you have considered putting in place some kind of strategy to oppose these malevolent actors, and are there similar problems that, for example, we have in our countries? And so it was interesting for us to understand what kind of strategies you are putting in place in this sense. We will be meeting in 2024, and this was very interesting for us to understand. Before leaving the floor to Honorable Onori, I forgot to mention that she was the head of the Cinque Stelle, the five-star movement, the head of the political group here. And now we have a question from another colleague from Italia Viva. Thank you, Chair, for your remarks. And I also have a couple of questions for you. Surely you have made many steps forward, a lot of progress, most significantly the change of the name. So North Macedonia, I remember when there were negotiations about this change in name, and I think that this was a major step forward in this sense. We know that for the accession process, the overcoming of disagreements, especially in the Western Balkans, which we know are present between Kosovo and Serbia, for example. So Europe is the Europe of people, the Europe of cultures and ethnicities. So I would like to ask you, Chair, how can we reconcile these elements among the presidents of Western Balkan countries? And my second question concerns the effectiveness of our strategy, our activities. We know that in some cases, because we know that the European Council will decide at the end, but single states also try to make some proposals. So is there a body where the parliaments of individual states, but even at a European level, can influence and accelerate, facilitate this process? We have a series of processes regarding Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova, and now their role, as well as Georgia's role as candidate country. So we also have to consider an overall balance in the enlargement of the European Union. But in addition to the role of the government, we must also consider the role of parliaments. So to conclude, I would just like to clarify that, of course, there is a Central European initiative, and there are initiatives resulting from the Berlin process. But my question to you is, what can we do to improve cooperation and negotiations, considering the fact that at a European level there are also intergovernmental issues or elements that can be helpful? Thank you.
Grazie. Adesso passerei la parola al Presidente.
I would leave the floor to Chairman Giulio Vigna. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Ademi, for your presence here today, and thank you for your availability. Thank you for your patience. We had a slight delay here in Rome. We had other activities, unfortunately, which were postponed, and therefore everything else after it. So thank you for your patience. What I would like to say is simply reconfirm what we said to each other in our conversation in Madrid. And the conversation that we had on the sidelines of the COSAC meeting. The idea of hearing the presidents, the chairman of the European Affairs committees on the accession process, and of course of Western Balkans, and of course that means also of North Macedonia, was something that was shared, an idea that was shared by all presidents, all chairs of the committees involved, and of the leaders of the political parties here at Parliament. And I thought it would be interesting to consider another facet of the accession process for your countries, in particular of North Macedonia, because, as you said, it's important what your countries have done, the steps forward, the progress in terms of legislation, the terms of reforms. My colleagues also mentioned, and I'm sure that my colleague will also reconfirm what we've already heard. As EU Political Affairs Committee, we believe that it's important to ask you, who are dealing with the integration of your country with EU enlargement in terms of reforms and legislation. We would like to understand what your point of view is on the most important issues and topics that are currently being debated in Brussels and other European countries. So we would like to hear your opinion on these. What you consider the directives and regulations and the most important topics that are currently being discussed in Brussels. In our bilateral meeting or conversation, I anticipated my question. Now we are currently at a European level, we're talking about the green transition, we're talking about electric vehicles, we're discussing packaging, and in general, the topic of green transition. And currently, there are two groups, the more radical group, the green group, and then there are more pragmatic countries, a more pragmatic group. So countries who are for the green transition no matter what. And there are countries such as Italy, for example, and other countries of the Mediterranean and Eastern Europe who are asking for a green transition that is sustainable from a social point of view. They're asking for a green transition that doesn't oppose the energy transition in Europe. Currently, we have a dependence. We are dependent on Russian gas by 24%. This will decrease in the following years, and of course, we're trying to avoid any dependence on Chinese lithium. That's something that we want to avoid. And then there is the debate on migration, of course. Mediterranean countries believe that whoever arrives in Europe, European countries, arrives to Europe. However, there are more North European countries, Central European countries that have a different vision. And they consider that migrants arriving in migrants who arrive and land in a country are automatically arriving in that country. They're not considered as migrants who are arriving and entering the European Union. And then, of course, there are a series of other debates, the reform of the Stability Pact and the new multi-annual financial plan, other financial aid to states. So clearly, I'm asking what your opinion is. Oh, I apologize. Apologies for the interruption. So I was saying there's a whole debate on state support and funding. So let's consider North Macedonia enters the EU tomorrow. The debate, the discussions would change because the actors, the forces in the field would change. And unfortunately, many in Europe still haven't understood how the dynamics would change. And that is a central part of the debate. If North Macedonia and other countries of the Western Balkans were to join the EU tomorrow, we would have a new balance in the EU. And that would, of course, influence debate at a European level. So we're wondering, and notwithstanding that Italy is in favor, of course, of North Macedonia's accession to the EU, but where would North Macedonia position itself on these major themes that are being discussed? So green transition, on migration, on the reform of the Stability Pact. What would your position be in a broader European debate? Because with the accession to the EU, that would mean that the North Macedonian Parliament, North Macedonian media, North Macedonian citizens would be part of this discussion. So what is North Macedonians' opinion, and what is the opinion of the civil society of North Macedonia on these broader issues? Are you pending more towards the vision of the Mediterranean countries of the EU or North European countries? Do you have a more similar vision to countries of the Mediterranean area, or is your vision more similar to more frugal countries for example, North and Central European countries. That is what we would like to understand. We believe, dear colleague, dear Chairman Ademi, we believe that many countries of the Western Balkans, including North Macedonia, are more sensitive and have a more similar vision to the Italian view and your Mediterranean countries, as opposed to northern and central European countries. That is our opinion. But we are asking you today what your vision truly is, so that we can understand more clearly your approach, and even from a broader geopolitical scenario. We know that it's always a very delicate balance, because we have other players involved, for example, China. And if we neglect some geographic areas, we risk other players coming in and taking over those areas, because Europe is all of us from a geopolitical point of view. That's very important, but what we would like to understand is how North Macedonia will be involved, and if it's going to be an ally of Italy within the broader European debate. Thank you. And I apologize if my question was quite long.
Presidente Giglio Vigna, prima di...
Thank you, Chairman Giglio Vigna. And before leaving the floor to Chairman Ademi for his rebuttal, we had colleagues and groups, committees in the previous legislation which discussed the joining of North Macedonia to NATO, and everyone was very enthusiastic. It was a very important process. We remember the Prespa agreement and the Bulgarian minority in North Macedonia. But I say this because we believe that we have the same values. We belong to a community that keeps growing. We have 32 members currently in the North Atlantic Treaty, with Finland and Sweden joining just recently. But this community is under threat. It's being attacked. The values and principles of this treaty are under attack. Chairman Giglio Vigna mentioned autocratic regimes that are trying to influence the political balance in the area, and the future entry into the EU of North Macedonia will be a fundamental step in pushing back this influence. So we will continue to work together to cooperate. We are fully aware that after independence from Russian gas, as mentioned by President Giglio Vigna, we will have to clearly consider true strategic autonomy of Western countries, so NATO and EU countries. We are behind on the timeline, on the schedule, but we know that only by staying together, by being united, will we be able to protect and safeguard our values and our democracies. So at this point, I would leave you the floor for your response. Thank you.
I hope that we are listening ourselves now. And thank you for the all questions. Thank you for the interest that you showed and through the questions about, let's say, about many important issues. I will start with the questions of Madame Honori. There are two questions: how Italy can support and facilitate the access in EU of North Macedonia. I will say about this question that it was very long-standing process, our accession process. In 2001, we signed the Stabilization and Association Agreement. In 2001. In 2005, we get the status of candidate country. Since 2009, we get a recommendation to start accession negotiations. Only in 2022, so last year, we started accession negotiations under a condition that before the second intergovernmental conference, we should change our constitution again. So, and this long-standing process, I think that affect declining of support of our citizens for our goal, to achieve our goal in EU, to be part of EU. So, as I said in my speech, we are supporting to change the rules how to become part of EU family, how to be decided for the enlargement policy. So to delete the veto and with the qualified majority to decide, because all countries in the Western Balkans, they can have open issues between there. So if we will continue with unanimity to decide about the enlargement policy, it will be a problem. It will be a problem. So the current topic, in our opinion, that we are discussing now is if there will be another veto of Bulgaria after changing the constitution. So we are not believing that we will fulfill everything, even if we are changing the constitution. So Italy and the other countries can help us, not only as North Macedonia, but as all Western Balkan countries, by, let's say, pushing on agenda, changing in decision-making process vis-a-vis enlargement process. So if we will decide to have a qualified majority, not unanimity, in deciding process regarding enlargement policy, it will be great. So as you know, Albania can be blocked by Greece, Serbia can be blocked, I don't know, by Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia can be blocked by Serbia, Montenegro can be blocked, I don't know by whom. So bilateral issues shouldn't be on the agenda when we are deciding for the enlargement policy. But on the agenda should be Copenhagen criteria. And to avoid blocking of the enlargement, we should change the decision-making process, introducing two-thirds majority. About the second question of Madame Honori, negative influence and raising of nationalism, populism, and how do we have a strategy to oppose these malign influences? What kind of strategy? I will say that we are, when we started to be part of NATO, we are more safe, and we are with more immunity to oppose these malign influences, especially Russian influences in our country. So we are cooperating with closely with all the NATO countries, with all our partners, to avoid those malign influences. But there are many challenges. For the first time during this mandate in our parliament, we have two MPs, one party with two MPs who are against EU openly in their program and against NATO. So they are with another opinion about our strategic relations. So they are with East. But for the first time, and for that, we are raising this concern to our allies that this long-standing process brings us many challenges, many problems, many obstacles. For the first time in our parliament, we have a political party which is orientation is to go with East, not to go with West. Today they have 2 MPs, but they are racing in polls. So in next elections, they probably will have more than 2 MPs. And for that, I am saying that it's alarm for all our partners, for all our allies, that we should collaborate more closely and to ensure the credibility of the enlargement policy. Now to go with another MP, Madame, that two questions about reconciliation. The first question, if I understand good, was the reconciliation in the between the Western Balkan countries. Yeah, we are working on it, and for that, as a political party, as a ruling party, we are saying that the past we should leave behind us. Let's look forward. And let's bring communities, nations, and countries in Western Balkans more and more closer. For that, leading by this purpose, we signed in 2017 with Bulgaria the Good Neighborly Agreement, for the agreement for good neighborly relations. Leading by this purpose, we signed the Presso Agreement. Leading by this purpose, we signed the protocol and we accept the negotiational framework in 2022. We accept to change again our constitution. And of course, personally, and my political party is supporting the dialogue between all countries, especially the dialogue between Republic of Kosovo and Serbia. We must have a reconciliation between all countries. Do we had, let's say, a painful history? Yes, it's true. But we should look forward. To move forward, and only reconciliation we can achieve our goals, and that goal is to establish and to ensure more prosperous, let's say, societies for all our citizens. And the second question, if I understood good, how to improve the cooperation between all countries, especially now Ukraine, Moldova, they get the candidate status of candidate countries, role of parliaments, Berlin process, and so on. So I will say that the all regional initiatives, most of them, they are contributing positively to bring us more closer and closer. So within Berlin process, within the EU accession process, within the other initiatives, we are closer and closer. And for improving the cooperation, I think that we need more and more EU representatives and EU institutions present in our countries. So if we have a more presence of our, let's say, partners from EU and from the supporting countries, so the cooperation will raise more and more between us. So through the Berlin process, we are going well. So all the countries are participating there. And I would say that it is one of the regional platforms that we are cooperating with the good results. And President Gilovigna, I want to thank the President Gilovigna for all good words. And I had a very pleasant meeting. We had a very pleasant meeting in Madrid, and we discussed about the old challenges that we are facing in our country. President Gilovigna raised very important issues and about green transitions, about independence from Russia gas, from Chinese lithium, about migration. And I will say that I will add about Russia aggression in Ukraine. So we are sharing the same foreign policy with EU foreign policy. Even in those circumstances that North Macedonia is not part of EU, even in those circumstances, our foreign policy is in the same line with the foreign policy of EU. So despite the fact that we are in or out from EU, we are in the same line, and of course that one of the, let's say, of the topic, Russian gas. So we are interested to be independent and to avoid the Russian influence in our country and in the other countries in the Western Balkan countries. So it is very important from a geopolitical view. Because in the Western Balkan countries, we have a lot of countries that can affect the whole EU. So now we are aware how important is, we are now more aware how important it is to be Western Balkan countries part of EU, to be Ukraine and Moldova part of EU. And we are supporting Ukraine and Moldova to be part of EU. So 27 countries are now in EU. Yes, EU is more united, but it's not complete. Without Western Balkan countries in EU, we cannot say that it's completed. And we are sharing the same views about all these issues that was raised from President Gilovigna. Thank you.
Grazie
If you
mille.
have another questions or comments, I'm in your disposal.
Purtroppo dobbiamo chiudere qui l'audizione.
Unfortunately, we don't have much more time available because we have another item on our agenda. So thank you, Chairman Ademi, for your contribution, and I declare this hearing closed. Thank you.
Grazie. It was a pleasure. It was pleasure to address today, to have a conversation, good conversation. So you have an open invitation in North Macedonia. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. President.